Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Well, welcome, folks, to the Worry-Free Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, retirement planning specialist and the world's friendliest financial fiduciary, Tony Walker. And before we get into more frequently asked questions of myself and the staff at Tony Walker Financial, I've got some exciting news to share with you. That's right, folks. Today's episode, being recorded on January 6th, 2026, is Worry-Free Retirement's 600th episode. 600 30-minute shows of the Worry-Free Retirement going back a long time. And of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't thank our own Aaron Orander, who years ago I recruited from a local television station that has helped us produce. Of course, Derek's on board now, but Aaron Orander has been with us for 600 episodes. So shout out to Aaron. Thank you very much, Aaron. Oh, incidentally, this TV show didn't start 600 episodes ago. It actually started prior to that at a local television station where I met Aaron Orander. In fact, I was the featured retirement specialist on that particular station for 7 years every Monday. So I don't know, you do the math on that, there's another 350 episodes. But that wasn't where it really started. Folks, it really started with myself being on TV way back in the mid-90s. Some of you may remember this because the show was aired in Louisville and Bowling Green, called Your Money Matters. Now, during that period of time, I used the local cable station there in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Miss Cheryl Morse produced the show, and again, probably did 400 to 500 episodes of Your Money Matters back then. So if you add all that together, well over 1,000 episodes, 30-minute episodes of TV time and radio time. Quite frankly, we have the radio show as well for your viewing and listening pleasure. So first of all, shout out to everyone who's kept abreast of what we've got going on, all the clients, all the prospects, the listeners, the viewers. Thank you so much for making all of this possible. Now, speaking of experience, recently I was asked by a prospective client interested in our services the following question. He said this: Tony, as an advisor, what makes your firm so different from the rest of those in the financial herd out there giving retirement advice? I thought about it, and then after thinking about the question, I responded with one word, and it was simply this: experience. Experience that spans a period of time of more than 41 years, and myself meeting face-to-face with more than 20,000 savers. Experience in overseeing more than 5,000 written retirement game plans. Experience that includes a trademark process I created years ago before anybody even thought about processes and retirement planning, that now continually serves more than 4,000 clients who trust their retirement savings to Tony Walker Financial. That's what I mean by experience. Oh, funny, after all these years of thinking about the past and where some of my ideas for this 5-step process originated from, I'm already smiling, folks. I stumbled across this marketing piece that I put together back in the 1990s. I'm going to get Aaron, if you can get a shot of this. This is hilarious. It's called A Better Way. Now, again, this is the 1990s, folks. And if you open up inside, this was actually pretty ingenious. I'm going to turn it over here and we'll get an over-the-shoulder shot. Look at what it says here. The 5 steps to your future, this little pyramid: gather your data, personalize goals, planning alternatives, plan of action, review annually. Ooh, and look at that. It's also got this handy dandy cassette tape. And then you fold it out. This is really cool. You fold it out. This was, again, a marketing piece I came up with. And back then, it dealt with estate taxes, because back in the 80s and 90s, you could only leave up to $600,000 before you got into estate taxes. Now it's a gajillion dollars. Most clients don't need to be worried about estate taxes, but back then, I was doing estate tax planning and working with people who had over $600,000. Now we fast forward to tax planning for those savers who don't have estate tax woes, but what I consider having what's called a tax tumor. That is the amount of money buried inside that tax-infested 401k or IRA of yours that most of you have no plan to deal with. Now today, we are going to continue with the most frequently asked questions of savers to us at Tony Walker Financial, specifically geared towards the taxes you will one day owe on that tax-infested 401k or IRA. So stay tuned. We've got some really good questions coming up. I'm going to answer all of those for you. You are watching or listening to the Worry-Free Retirement. I'm Tony Walker. We'll be right back. Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. Tony Walker here. In case you're just now joining us, we're into our another new show of frequently asked questions of Tony Walker Financial, this dealing specifically with various tax questions that we receive on a regular basis. Now, before we get into this, I'm going to answer all these questions on my own, but keep in mind, besides myself at Tony Walker Financial, we have 20 full-time staff that's ready to serve your needs, 2 of which are tax certified. So we provide all of the tax planning advice for our clients at no additional charge. Keep in mind, the only thing that you would be asked to do in terms of taxes is you are still going to have to either file your own tax return or have someone file it for you. So again, the tax questions we're coming up with are planning tax questions that we get all the time. Derek's at the helm. We're going to reel through as many of these as we can, time allotted. So Derek, let's get started with question number 1. What will the taxes on my 401k be if I roll it over to you guys? This comes up all the time. Had a couple in yesterday. I had a lot of appointments yesterday in the Louisville office. But anyway, a gentleman came in. He'd been laid off. He was under the age of 55. He luckily had some savings. He thinks he's going to be able to get another job. But he says, I don't want to leave that 401k at my previous employer. What if I move it over to you guys and you put it in a 401k? And I said, well, we can't really put it in a 401k. We would put it in what's called an IRA. So we do this all the time. We call it the split IRA concept, where we'll use Charles Schwab. Sometimes we'll use annuities, but these are IRAs. So basically, for us to roll over a 401k to a qualified IRA, there's absolutely no taxes to do so. And which shocked him. I think he thought because to move it out, just to roll it out, it was going to be taxable. So again, if it's done properly from somebody that knows what they're doing, you can roll that 401k over to an IRA, and again, there are no taxes to do the rollover. Obviously, at some point when you go to take money out of it, that's when the taxes come. Okay, next question. This is good. What will the taxes be when I go to draw money out of the 401k? Well, let's take this gentleman, for instance, because he was 55-ish. If he wanted the money out of the IRA once we got it, he said he didn't need it. But let's just say in 2 years, he says, hey, Tony, I got to get $30,000 out of the thing, which we could get it to him, no problem. The problem is he's going to have to pay taxes. And in this case, since he's under the age of 59 and a half, there's an additional 10% tax penalty. Now, I won't get into something called a 72T, but there's things we can do to negate that 10% penalty. But basically, any distribution from a 401k or IRA is a taxable event, assuming it's a pre-tax account. Now, at Tony Walker Financial, what we do through our tax planning department is, before you just go yanking money out randomly, we're going to make sure that you don't go into these higher tax brackets. Aaron put this up full screen. As you can see, if you're not careful here, again, as we like to say, the more you make, the more they take. So every dollar that is pulled out of a pre-tax 401k or IRA hits this graphic, so to speak, and you got to be really careful because you could accidentally throw yourself into what we call higher tax brackets. Again, our job is to make sure that doesn't happen. Next question, should I do a Roth? Boy, this is commonplace anymore. So again, a Roth IRA is not a pre-tax account. A Roth IRA is an account that you pay the taxes now. It goes into this Roth IRA, and the beauty of that is once you get the taxes paid up front, which you have to pay them up front, over the long term, as it grows, and even when you take the money out, it is completely tax-free. Now, the problem with people saying, well, you should do a Roth is it still depends on your overall situation, your age, your current tax bracket, and again, as best we can determine what your future tax bracket will be at retirement. In most cases, though, yes, it would be nice to have some of your money, not necessarily all of it, some of your money in a Roth so that you can be more tax diversified. And we can help you determine if a Roth IRA is right for you. Next question. Now, this gets into what we call a Roth conversion. Again, I had a client in yesterday and we were talking about this. They were a little on the younger side. They had a 401k. They've done really well at saving. 401k well over $1 million. They had another IRA of about $500,000. I mean, these people were socking money away. They also had a lot of savings, had about $300,000 in the bank. They're working, everything's fine. And I started talking about this idea of the tax tumor. And they'd been watching the show and listening to the radio. They heard a little something about it. They said, well, what's the big deal about this tax tumor? And I said, well, the problem is if you keep saving this much money in these pre-tax accounts, one day the taxes could be enormous. And if the government raises the taxes for some reason, you're going to be in a world of hurt because now if you got $3 or $4 million sitting in these 401ks and IRAs, every dollar that comes out is fully taxable and who knows what they're going to tax it at. So what we can do is we can go in, we can take an existing IRA. Imagine we walk over to Congress and we say, hey, I've got this $100,000 IRA. I'm willing to pay the taxes on it now. Can I do that? And they'd say, sure, you can do that. So let's say you're in a 20% bracket. You take the $100,000, you convert it to what's called a Roth. You give them the $20,000 because that's the taxes. You pay that out of pocket. You don't pay that from within the account. So now that $100,000 grows tax-free forever. And I mean tax-free. So way down the road, now let's say that $100,000 is worth $500,000. You're retired and you want to pull money out. There are no taxes. And you might say, well, why is that a big deal? Well, as we'll see in a minute, if you have tax-free income, that doesn't affect IRMA, it doesn't affect Social Security. So yes, in some cases, Roth conversions can be a huge asset to your planning in the future, but just be careful. Make sure you meet with somebody like us that does a lot of these Roth conversions to make sure a Roth conversion is right for you. Next question. Probably the scariest thing out there is this thing called the required minimum distributions, or RMD. So the question is, how do required minimum distributions affect my taxes? They affect it immensely because a required minimum distribution is assuming that money has to come out of a pre-tax account. Again, remember, this money's never been taxed, whether it's a 401k, 403b, 457, IRA. So the current RMD age, as we record this show in 2026, is age 73. So if you are 73, over 73, getting ready to turn 73, the government is going to force you, they're going to force you to take money out of that RMD. And you say, why are they doing that? Because they want their tax revenue, folks. You've been deferring it long enough, and the whole point of the RMD is to get all that money taxed out of your estate before you die. They want those taxes. And in fact, the RMD goes up every year thereafter. This is why you need a strategy around the RMD, and we're really good at this. So whether you're already retired, not even close to 73, way over 73, we have some really unique strategies on how to deal with these taxes. Now, you're going to still pay them. The other option, you can do what's called a QCD and give it to charity, but assuming you or your family wants to use this money, the idea is how do we negate some of these RMD taxes by having a plan in advance, and we can help you with that. Okay, well, I think I've kind of answered that, but let's go over this again because this is important. Why do I have to take an RMD even if I don't need the money? Well, again, folks, the IRS has set up rules in place for these RMDs. And if, let's say, you just kind of get a little hard-nosed about this and say, well, I'm not going to take my RMD, the heck with it. If I'm 73, I'm just going to see what happens. Well, if you do not take that age 73 distribution and take it every year, for every year you don't take it, there's a 25% penalty assessed for missing one of these RMD distributions.
Heavy.
So it's a huge deal. One of the things we do in our office is one of our tax certified staff will be constantly monitoring the RMDs. And not only will we make sure those RMDs are taken out to avoid those penalties, we'll also go in and figure out which account it might be best to draw money out of. Because the RMD doesn't have to be taken out of all the IRAs. We just have to cumulative know what is the RMD. And in some cases, we'll take it out of one or two accounts, not all of your IRAs. Again, we can help with that. This is a good one. Annuities. Can they help reduce the pressure? Here's the key word, the pressure on the RMDs. Now, annuities cannot reduce or help with the RMDs per se, but it's the pressure. You see, as people get older and they get into this age 73 and beyond, that RMD is going to keep going up. And what they worry about as they get older, maybe cognitively, maybe they don't have people handling it, maybe they got a bunch of IRA CDs at the bank that nobody's watching. If they accidentally miss these payments or don't take out enough, they're going to be penalized. So, especially if we have annuities that provide
Mailbox Money!
These type of annuities, once we turn on the Mailbox Money, generally are more than the RMD. And since they are paying down the original principal, which goes into the calculation of the RMD, generally the Mailbox Money will stay ahead of the RMD. So as you get older, you don't have to worry about all this stuff. You can enjoy your money without the fear of one day running out. So Mailbox Money, in many cases, can take the pressure off of future calculations. And again, we can show you how Mailbox Money can be a huge advantage when doing RMD planning. Next question, how do I lower taxes in the early years of retirement? So in case you haven't seen my book, Live Well, Die Broke, I would highly encourage you to order this book. Live Well, Die Broke gets into the fact that I've learned over the years of working with so many retirees. Folks, again, I know there's a lot of people in this retirement planning game. I've been doing this for decades and have literally worked with thousands of people. So my experience has allowed me to watch retirement play out. And what I've seen over the years, the biggest mistake people make with their money, especially savers who are afraid to spend their money, is they wait too long to use and enjoy this money. So what happens is they let the money grow and grow and grow, and that's what Wall Street tells them to do. Well, all that's happening is the tax tumor is growing, and then they get to a point in life where it's too late to spend it. So what we have is something we call the 3 halves of life. Put this up, Aaron. The 3 halves of life is something that allows us to help manipulate the money so that we can get it to you quicker rather than just trying to stockpile it at some future date when you may not be able to enjoy it. So that sounds like you right now. If you don't have a game plan, if you don't have a plan to use and enjoy this money before it's too late, let's talk. And we made this so easy to do. We call it the 10-minute free fiduciary phone call. So take advantage of talking to me, Tony Walker. All you do is log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or call us anytime at 877-499-9255. Well, what does the Bible have to say about the 4 different types of use of money you have according to Scripture? Good stuff coming up. We're getting ready to talk about the third option, which is investing it. I'm Tony Walker. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Tired of the roller coaster ride of the stock market? Let Tony Walker show you how to smooth out the ride with your money. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started.
Well, welcome to our client spotlight here at WorryFree Productions, and with us in the studio today is Brian and Anita Ashley. Ashleys, it is so good to see you. It's been several years, actually, but it is so good to see you, and thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Yes, Tony. Thank you for inviting us. We're glad to be here.
If you remember, how did you first hear about Tony Walker Financial? Approximately how long ago was that?
It was 12 years ago come September, and we were just trying to figure out where we were in our long-term plan. We had asked you about when we could retire, and you turned that binder around to us, and I can see you right now. You said, folks, you can do this today. 4 days after we met with you, my company came out that I had worked for 42 years and announced a change to the retirement plan, to everything. And you had to retire by November 30th of that year. Tony, if we had not already been to see you, if you had not already laid out for us what that plan was and how that plan could work for us, we would have been petrified. I mean, we would have just gone, lost our minds, wouldn't we? But man, when they did that, I just came home from work that night and I said, you know what? I'm not worried. Let's call Tony tomorrow, because we had already called you and said, we love the plan, said things have changed, and you set up an appointment for us. And I had to retire by November the 30th. We retired September the 13th.
Right. Now, did you retire at the same time as well?
I just quit.
You said, I'm not letting her go by herself. I'm done too.
Looking for an advisor you can trust? Schedule your free phone call with Tony at TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call 1-877-499-9255.
Are you retired or retiring soon? Do you have a 401k, IRA, 403b, thrift savings account, or lump sum pension that you'd like to move to safer territory? Did you know that all the money you see on your 401k statement isn't really yours? Depending on your overall taxable income, the government has essentially a lien on your 401k that can tax as much as 40% of your money when you go to take it out. Tony Walker calls this the 401k tax tumor. For over 40 years, retirement specialist Tony Walker has helped thousands of savers worry less about money by creating game plans to deal with your tax tumor. Get control of your retirement by controlling the taxes owed on it. Schedule a free meeting to see if you can reduce your tax tumor and provide a guaranteed income you can never outlive. To get started, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement with the money missionary himself, Tony Walker.
Several weeks ago, I introduced the 4 biblical ways to handle money and what God allows us to decide to do with the money He allows us to control while this money is in our possession. That's right, folks. When you boil it all down, there are only 4 things you are expected to do with this precious commodity we call money. First, by God's grace, we have permission to spend it on whatever we want to spend it on. Second, we can decide how much and who to give it to, whether it be family, friends, charity, or church. In fact, if you read the New Testament, you'll see that giving is really not based on some percent or set percentage, but rather on how God's Spirit moves you and I to give. Third, the topic of today, we can invest it for some future use. And then, number 4, the last thing you and I can do with this money, for the next week's show we'll talk about this, is that ultimate last ride when, that's right folks, we're dead and gone and have to leave it to somebody having no idea how they're really going to handle it. So before I share with you my humble opinion on what the Bible has to say as to how much one should invest for the future and where it might be appropriate for savers to invest it, let's remember that the world's ways are not always God's ways when it comes to using and enjoying your money. This was so true up until the creation of the 401k in 1978, when most savers, like my granddad, would never have considered themselves investors, but rather they called themselves savers. For he and most of his generation, these savers would never think of investing their retirement savings with Wall Street, such as what savers are doing today in these 401k plans. No, in those days, savers opted for the reliable and predictable guaranteed lifetime retirement income complements of their employer-provided pension plans, something my granddad called
Mailbox Money!
You see, Mailbox Money is a process of receiving a guaranteed monthly income for the rest of one's life with no worries of where to invest that money for the future because, well, it's guaranteed to last as long as you do. Now, don't get me wrong. In Granddad's day, there were a few folks who loved investing in the stock market, but these folks were wired that way. They understood how to read markets, how to read financial statements. These few investors were studying the markets, and they understood the risks associated with investing in it. But for most people who I deem as savers, who are not comfortable putting all their money in the stock market, especially as they approach retirement, their only option is the 401k plan, and thus they just assume that they have to take a bunch of risk to make it in retirement. And according to this graphic we put together of Wall Street, that's right, the goal coming from the financial world is you have to save, 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 without ever thinking about when in the world you're going to spend what you've saved. But usually, here's the problem I've run into with most savers is they wait too long to spend their money, which is why years ago, this was over 25 years ago, I created this biblical approach of using and enjoying your investments before it's too late, something I call the 3 halves of life. It's a real-world look of how money should be invested based on the fact that as we age, listen closely folks, what I've noticed in working with all these savers over all these years is most people will spend less and less money, meaning they need less of it as they get older, which is why the majority of our clients do not take a lot of risk because, well, quite frankly, there's no need to. You see, if you are investing the majority of your life savings in the stock market in retirement, and if we go through another 2008, or worse yet, listen, 3 steady years of decline like we saw from 2000 through 2002, well, you're going to be losing a lot of sleep at night, and you could even possibly one day run out of money. Now, that's not what I call a worry-free retirement. Interesting that the late, great Charles Spurgeon had this to say about taking a lot of risk when we don't know what the heck we're doing. He said, human action is often the hasty result of passion or fear, and is followed by regret and alteration. But nothing can take the Almighty by surprise. My advice, don't let the winds of Wall Street sweep you off your feet by making rash and hasty decisions with money you may or may not have in the future as a result. My advice, if you're a saver, lean into the fact that you are a saver. Now, assuming you are more concerned with the return of your money than on it, that's right, why not play it more safe rather than taking all this risk? Get a game plan. Invest some of it for long-term growth? Well, absolutely, by all means. But don't set yourself up for failure by worrying over investments and investing in things that you don't understand. Again, as the nearly 4,000 clients that Tony Walker Financial could attest to, there's usually no reason to take a bunch of risk with your investments when you've got a game plan which proves you don't have to. And maybe that's you right now. You are retired or nearing retirement, and you've been duped into thinking that what you got to do to get there is to buy a bunch of high-flying stocks or keep all of your money in the stock market, and always assuming that the market always goes up but never goes down. If that's you, we need to talk. And have we made this easy to do? In fact, we call this the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call where you and I, that's right, the owner of the company, you and I will get to talk about your situation. And then, if it merits, if we think we can help, we're going to set up a free appointment. That's right, again, with myself, Tony Walker, to talk about your situation and get that free proprietary retirement game plan only offered by Tony Walker Financial. So to take advantage of this free phone call, why don't you do this now? Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You're going to click on that Let's Get Started, or to make it easy for you, you can call us 24/7. The toll-free number, 877-499-9255. Well, we hope you've enjoyed today's program. We look forward to seeing you next week on the Worry-Free Retirement, but between now and then, you be worry-free and you make it a good one.